My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm 39 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my boyfriend ended our 2.5-year relationship with a text message sent at 11:03 on a Wednesday morning while I was reviewing a budget report at work. That was how it ended. No argument the night before, no tense conversation, no warning that something had been breaking while I was still standing inside it, trying to hold it up with both hands. Just a message lighting up my phone. This isn't working anymore. I need to focus on myself and my spiritual journey. Please don't contact me. I've already blocked your number after sending this. I stared at the screen so long my coffee went cold beside my keyboard. Around me, people were talking, printers were humming. Someone in the next cubicle was laughing at something on speakerphone, and all I could think was that a man I had loved for 2.5 years had decided I was worth less than a real goodbye. Mason Cole was 35, handsome in that curated, conscious sort of way, all soft linen shirts, and carefully worded captions about growth, alignment, and peace. When I met him, he seemed thoughtful, grounded, maybe a little lost, but sincere. He knew how to look at you when you were talking, like every word mattered. He knew how to sound gentle even when he was asking for something. And Mason was always asking for something. At first, it was small, support while he figured things out. Patience while he transitioned careers, understanding while he redefined success on his own terms. Then it became money for certification courses when he decided to build a wellness brand, help with rent after a bad month, a loan when his car needed repairs, nights where I sat across from him at my kitchen table, helping him polish proposals and fix invoices while he rubbed his temples and said he didn't know what he'd do without me. I knew. He would have fallen apart much sooner. I paid for more than I should have. I gave more than I should have, not because he demanded it outright. Mason was too polished for that. He made need look noble. He wrapped dependence in vulnerability and called it trust. And for a while I believed him. Even after the text, I told almost no one. My older sister Naomi, because she would have found out eventually, and because I needed one person in the world who would tell me the truth without making me feel pathetic for still hurting. But that was it. I didn't post cryptic quotes. I didn't send paragraphs. I didn't contact him from another number or beg for answers he had already proven he was too cowardly to give. I went to work. I came home. I tried to sleep. Then the rest of it started surfacing in pieces, the way ugly truths always do. Quietly at first. A mutual friend mentioning she'd seen Mason out with someone. Another saying he'd been spending a lot of time with a woman named Serena from his men's healing and meditation circle. The same circle he once told me was private, deeply personal, and not the kind of space partners should enter because it might interfere with everyone's emotional honesty. I accepted that explanation at the time. Of course I did. By the end of the week, I knew he had been seeing Serena for at least 3 months before he sent that text. 3 months of telling me he was exhausted, overwhelmed, needing space, needing to be fully present with his inner work, while I was paying for his course fees and asking whether he wanted stir-fry or pasta for dinner. I was angry, but anger wasn't the sharpest part. The sharpest part was the humiliation. All those moments I had defended him. All those nights I had swallowed my unease because I wanted to be mature, supportive, evolved. Whatever word made women easier to disappoint. He had not just cheated. He had built an entire moral costume around it. So when he left, he could step into the next chapter already looking righteous. Still, I stayed quiet, until yesterday. He made a Facebook post around lunchtime, one of those long, carefully performed declarations designed to sound wise and wounded at the same time. Finally free from toxic women and their suffocating energy. No more walking on eggshells. No more dimming my light to make insecure people comfortable. The universe has shown me what real feminine peace looks like, and I'm never settling for less again. Here's to authentic love, spiritual alignment, and new beginnings. He added hashtags too, because of course he did. Healing, growth, freedom, divine balance. And attached to it was a beach photo of him and Serena, barefoot in the sand, smiling like they had survived something noble instead of causing something rotten. I read the post twice, then a third time, not because I doubted what I was seeing, but because there is a special kind of disbelief that happens when somebody lies so boldly you almost admire the nerve of it. He hadn't just left me through a text. He had publicly recast himself as a man escaping my toxicity. He had turned betrayal into a personal brand. My hands were cold, but my face felt warm. I clicked on his profile, Read the post again. Saw the comments already rolling in. You deserve peace. Proud of you. So glad you chose yourself. And then I noticed something he had clearly forgotten. His photos. 2 months earlier, there was still a public picture from Serena's birthday party. Not the one he was trying to curate now. The other one. The one where he had his arm around her waist while she leaned back laughing, his mouth against her shoulder, both of them dressed like they had somewhere much less innocent to be after the camera stopped flashing. The caption talked about magnetic energy and soul recognition. At the time, he had told me he was at a men's retreat outside the city. I stared at that photo for a long second. Then I went back to his new post and typed 4 words. Congratulations on your new journey. Polite, clean, nothing dramatic. And then I tagged a few people. His boss, Andrea, at the insurance firm where he worked. His mother, Diane. His father. His sister, Claire, who had once looked me in the eye and told me she admired how patient I was with him. A church leader from the conservative congregation his parents still attended, where Mason liked to present himself as a changed, morally grounded man trying to return to traditional values. I didn't insult him. I didn't accuse him. I didn't explain a thing. I just made sure the people he had been lying to could see what he had posted for themselves. Then I set my phone face down on the table and waited. The first message came 7 minutes later. Evelyn, what did you do? The second one hit before I even unlocked the screen. Take the tags down, right now. Then another. You are being insane. Then another. My mother is calling me. Delete it. I leaned back in my chair and looked out through the kitchen window, where late afternoon light was spilling gold across the buildings across the street. My apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the faint rattle of the vent above the stove. Somewhere downstairs, a dog barked twice and stopped. My phone kept vibrating against the wood. For 3 weeks, Mason had controlled the ending. For the first time, I had touched the story, and he was already panicking. I picked up the phone, opened his messages, and watched them keep coming. Anger first, then threats, then pleading. That was when I knew this was only the beginning. I didn't reply to a single message. Not when his tone shifted from outrage to desperation. Not when the insults softened into negotiation. Not even when the messages started coming faster, stacked one on top of the other like he could bury the truth under sheer volume. I just watched. There's a strange clarity that comes when you stop trying to fix someone. When you finally step back and let them face the consequences of their own choices, it's quiet, almost peaceful, like standing outside during a storm instead of being trapped in it. The first public crack came from Claire. His sister had always been the composed one, practical, direct, the kind of woman who didn't speak unless she had something worth saying. When we were still together, she'd once pulled me aside during a family dinner and said, "You're good for him. He needs someone steady." I used to think that was a compliment. Now I realized it was a warning. Her comment appeared under his beach photo. Interesting. Wasn't this taken when you said you were working through something alone? And isn't that the same woman from your private men's circle? Simple, precise, devastating. The replies started piling up under her comment almost immediately. Questions, confusion, a few subtle jabs disguised as concern. People connecting dots Mason had assumed would never be seen in the same frame. His post was still up, but the tone around it had shifted. Then, 10 minutes later, it disappeared. Deleted. Too late. Screenshots had already started circulating. I saw one in a group chat I wasn't even part of anymore. Someone had forwarded it to Naomi, who sent it to me with a single message. He's unraveling. I didn't respond to her either. Not yet, because something else was happening. My phone rang. I looked at the screen and felt a flicker of something I couldn't quite name. Diane, his mother. For 2 years, that woman had treated me like I was something Mason had temporarily settled for. Not bad enough to reject outright, but not aligned enough to fully accept. I wasn't spiritual enough, not soft enough. Too grounded in logic, she once said, like that was a flaw instead of the only reason her son had kept his life together as long as he had. And now she was calling me. I let it ring twice before answering. "Evelyn," she said immediately, her voice tight, controlled, like she was holding it together by force. "What is going on?" No greeting, no pleasantries, just panic wrapped in authority. "I'm not sure what you mean," I said calmly, even though I knew exactly what she meant. "Your name is all over Mason's post," she snapped. "He says you're spreading lies about him, about some woman." I leaned against the kitchen counter, my fingers resting lightly on the edge. "I didn't spread anything," I said. I commented on what he posted. "He said he's been single," she continued, ignoring me, "since you two ended things last month. 3 weeks ago, I corrected softly. He ended things 3 weeks ago, by text. There was a pause, just a fraction of a second, but I heard it. Then I added, evenly, after he'd been seeing Serena for about 3 months. Silence. Not the kind where someone is preparing a response. The kind where something lands. I could almost hear the moment her version of her son cracked. That doesn't sound right, she said finally, but her voice had lost its sharpness. It's accurate, I replied. The timeline is there, on his own profile. Another pause, longer this time. Then, quieter. Thank you for letting me know, Evelyn. She hung up before I could say anything else. I stared at the phone for a second, then set it down. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like something being corrected. Like a balance that had been off for a long time, finally shifting back into place. But Mason wasn't done. Of course he wasn't. The messages came again, this time sharper, more frantic. You're twisting everything. You knew what people would think. You're trying to ruin me. I scrolled through them without reacting. Then one came that made me pause. Andrea saw it. His boss. I exhaled slowly. Andrea was not someone you wanted seeing. Your personal drama bleed into professional space. She was disciplined, direct, and completely uninterested in emotional theatrics. Mason had once told me she ran the office like a controlled system. He had said it like it was a complaint. I had heard it as a compliment. Another message followed immediately. I have to go into work tomorrow and explain this because of you. Because of me. I almost smiled, but I didn't respond. Instead, I opened his profile again. The beach post was gone. In its place, a new one had appeared. Sometimes people will try to sabotage your growth when they can't control you anymore. I'm choosing peace. No tags, no photos. Just damage control. But the comments were already there. Claire again. Then maybe you should start by telling the truth. Underneath that, someone else. Wait, were you with her while you were still with Evelyn? And then another. Didn't you say that retreat was men only? The narrative was slipping, and Mason was losing his grip on it. I put my phone down and walked to the window. The light outside had shifted, softer now. Evening settling in. Cars moving slower down the street. Headlights starting to flicker on one by one. Inside, everything was still. No raised voices, no arguments, no tension sitting heavy in the air like it used to when something felt off and I couldn't prove why. Just quiet. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was catching up to something that had already happened. I felt like I was ahead of it. Behind me, my phone buzzed again. I didn't turn around, because I already knew what was happening. Mason wasn't being attacked. He was being seen. And there is nothing more dangerous to someone like him than that. He showed up at 7:12 the next morning. I knew the time because I had just poured my coffee and was standing barefoot in the kitchen, watching steam curl up from the mug when the knocking started. Not hesitant, not polite, sharp, repetitive, like he expected the door to open simply because he was there. I didn't move right away. I let him knock again, and again. Then his voice came through the wood. Evelyn, I know you're home. Of course he did. Mason had always known my routines. What time I woke up, when I left for work, when I usually took a shower. He had memorized my life when it benefited him. I walked to the door slowly, not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't in a rush anymore. When I opened it, he was standing there in sunglasses and workout clothes that looked too clean for someone who hadn't slept well. His jaw was tight, his posture rigid. You need to fix this, he said immediately. No hello, no hesitation. Just demand. I leaned against the doorframe, one hand still wrapped loosely around my coffee mug. Good morning to you too. His mouth tightened. Don't do that, he snapped. Don't act like this is normal. You've crossed a line. I raised an eyebrow slightly. I commented on your post. You tagged people, he shot back. You knew exactly what would happen. Yes, I said calmly. They would see it? His sunglasses came off in one quick motion. His eyes were red. Not from crying. From lack of sleep. From stress. From trying to hold too many versions of the same lie together at once. My mother is freaking out, he continued. My boss wants to have a conversation. Claire is... He cut himself off, shaking his head. You've turned everyone against me. I took a slow sip of my coffee. No, I said, you did that. His expression hardened instantly. There it is, he said, almost laughing. The cold, superior attitude. This is exactly what I was talking about. You always have to be right. You always have to control the narrative. I let the silence stretch for a second. Then, evenly, you ended our relationship over text after cheating on me for 3 months. His jaw flexed. That's not... With Serena, I added, not raising my voice, while telling me you were at retreats, while I was paying for your certification courses. That's not the point, he snapped, louder now. I tilted my head slightly. It seems like the point. He took a step closer, lowering his voice like that would make it more convincing. The point is, you're trying to destroy my reputation out of jealousy. I actually laughed then. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, disbelieving exhale that made his face tighten even more. Jealous, I repeated. Yes, he said, latching onto it. You can't handle that I've moved on, that I've found something more aligned, something real. Aligned, I echoed softly. Is that what you call overlapping relationships now? His face flushed. You're twisting everything, he said again, but it sounded weaker this time. I set my mug down on the small table by the door. Mason, I said, meeting his eyes fully now, you posted about being free from a toxic woman. I didn't say your name. You didn't need to, I replied. You've been posting photos of us for 2 years. Everyone knows who you were talking about. He hesitated, just for a second, and I saw it, that flicker of realization, that maybe this wasn't going to bend back into his control. You could have handled this privately, he said, grasping for something steadier, like an adult. I did, I said, for 3 weeks. That landed. I saw it in the way his shoulders shifted, like something inside him had just been nudged out of place. You blindsided me, he said, his voice sharpening again. You set me up. No, I said quietly. I stopped protecting you. The words hung there between us. He stared at me, like he didn't recognize the person standing in front of him. Maybe he didn't, because the version of me he knew would have been explaining herself by now, soothing him, trying to de-escalate. That version was gone. This isn't over, he said finally, straightening up, pulling himself back into that performance of control. You think you can just humiliate me and walk away? I can sue you for defamation. I didn't react. On what basis? I asked. You're spreading false information, he said quickly. You're implying things that aren't true. I didn't imply anything, I replied. I pointed people to what you posted. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out, because there was nowhere left to go with that. You need to tell them it's a misunderstanding, he said, shifting tactics again. Tell them Serena and I are just friends. I blinked once. Are you? He hesitated, and that was answer enough. The photo, he continued quickly, you need to say it was taken out of context, that it's old, that people are reading into it. The photo from 2 months ago? I asked. When we were still together? His face went red. That's not the point. It seems to be a pattern with you, I said. His hands clenched at his sides. You're being vindictive, he said, almost spitting the word now. This is exactly why I had to leave. You make everything toxic. I stepped back slightly, opening the door wider. Then you should probably go, I said calmly. He stared at me. You're not even going to try to fix this? No. The word was simple. Final. And for the first time since he arrived, he looked uncertain, like he had expected resistance, emotion, anything he could push against. But there was nothing, just a closed door he hadn't realized was already locked. This isn't over, he repeated, but it sounded thinner now, less certain. It is for me, I said. He stood there for another second, then another, like he was waiting for something to change, for me to soften, to apologize, to give him a way back into control. I didn't. Eventually, he stepped back, put his sunglasses on again like armor. You'll regret this, he said. I didn't answer. I just closed the door. The click of the lock was louder than I expected. For a moment, I stood there, my hand still resting on the handle, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway. Then silence. Real silence. Not the kind filled with tension. The kind that feels earned. I went back to the kitchen, picked up my coffee, and took another sip. It had gone a little cold. I didn't mind, because somewhere out there, Mason was trying to hold his story together with threads that were already snapping. And for the first time since the text message, I wasn't part of the mess he was making. I was simply the reason it had started to unravel. For 2 days, he went quiet. Not completely. The messages slowed, then stopped. His profile stayed active, but controlled. No more emotional essays, no more dramatic declarations. Just a few neutral posts, like he was trying to reset the tone and pretend none of it had spiraled the way it had. I almost thought he might disappear. I underestimated him. On the 3rd day, the videos started. Short clips, carefully framed, soft lighting. That same measured voice he used when he wanted to sound thoughtful instead of defensive. I've been reflecting a lot lately, he said in the first one, looking just past the camera, like he was speaking to something deeper than the audience, about what it means to leave a situation that's no longer aligned with your growth. No names, no direct references, but enough details that anyone who knew us would know. My ex struggled with control, he continued in another clip, with letting go, with allowing space for evolution. And when I chose myself, things escalated. I watched the video once, then again. Not because I was confused, because I wanted to see how far he was willing to take it. The comments were immediate. Stay strong, King. You did the right thing. Toxic partners always try to tear you down when you outgrow them. I set my phone down slowly. There it was. The new narrative. Clean, sympathetic, designed for strangers who would never question it. He wasn't panicking anymore. He was adapting, rewriting. And this time he was doing it where the truth wasn't already visible. That was the part that almost impressed me. Almost. Because then came the next layer. Screenshots. Fragments of old conversations posted in his stories. Cropped. Selective. Out of context. Messages where I had asked him where he was. Where I had said I felt disconnected. Where I had questioned things that didn't make sense at the time. To anyone watching, it looked like I had been suspicious. Controlling. Difficult. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not panic. Not fear. Something sharper. Because this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about reputation. And unlike his, mine had never been built on performance. It had been built on consistency. Quiet, steady, real. And I wasn't going to let him turn that into something else. Still, I didn't respond. Not publicly. Not yet. Because I knew something he didn't. He wasn't careful enough. Mason knew how to curate. He did not know how to cover his tracks. That difference matters. I called Craig that afternoon. We'd worked together years ago before he moved into cybersecurity. The kind of person who noticed things most people didn't even realize existed. "Tell me you still owe me a favor," I said when he answered. He laughed softly. "Depends what kind." "The kind where I send you screenshots," I said, "and you tell me what's actually behind them." There was a pause. Then, "Send them." I forwarded everything Mason had posted. The cropped messages, the timestamps, the fragments. Craig didn't respond for almost an hour. When he did, it was one line. "He's sloppy." I exhaled slowly. "What do you see?" I asked. "Metadata's still there," he said. "He didn't strip anything. You can see original timestamps, edits, even sequence gaps." My grip on the phone tightened slightly. "Sequence gaps?" "Yeah," Craig said. "He's showing parts of conversations that don't line up. Missing chunks. Messages out of order. If you pull the full thread, it tells a very different story." I closed my eyes for a second. There it was. The crack. "How different?" I asked quietly. Craig didn't hesitate. "Enough to bury him," he said. Silence settled on my end. Because I knew exactly what that meant. The truth wasn't just available. It was undeniable. "You want me to extract everything?" he asked. I thought about it. About the videos. About the comments. About strangers building an opinion of me based on something that wasn't real. Then I thought about something else. Mason's sister, Claire. The way she had commented. The way she had already started pulling at threads. "I don't need it public," I said finally. Craig paused. "Then what do you need?" "Just make sure it's complete," I replied. "Clean, untouchable." He understood immediately. "I'll send it over." That evening, the file came through. Full message threads, dates, times, every conversation exactly as it had happened. No edits, no gaps, no performance, just truth. There it was in plain text. Him telling me he was exhausted and needed to rest while messaging Serena about booking a weekend trip. Him thanking me for covering his expenses while joking with her about finally being free soon. Him telling me he missed me minutes before sending her a photo from my apartment. I didn't feel angry reading it. Not anymore. Just clear. Like looking at something that had already ended and understanding exactly why. I closed the file. Then I opened my messages. Scrolled to Claire. Paused for a second. Then sent a single line. In case he tries to say any of this is fake. I attached everything. No explanation. No commentary. Just truth. I set my phone down and leaned back against the couch. Outside, the sky had gone dark. The city was quieter now. And somewhere out there, Mason was still talking. Still performing. Still building a version of reality that only worked if no one looked too closely. I didn't need to interrupt him. I just needed the right person to see. Because once that happened, he wouldn't be able to control anything anymore. It didn't happen slowly. That was the part people get wrong about collapse. They think it's gradual. That there are stages, warnings, time to adjust. There isn't. There's a moment where everything still looks intact. And then there's the moment after. Claire posted the next morning. Not a vague comment. Not a subtle question. A video. I saw it before I even got out of bed. Naomi had sent it with 3 words. "You need this." I sat up, opened the link, and pressed play. Claire was sitting at her kitchen table. No makeup, hair pulled back, no performance. Just direct. "My name is Claire Cole," she began, "and the man posting about surviving a toxic relationship this week is my brother." She didn't pause. Didn't soften it. "He's lying." My chest tightened slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what was about to happen. Because once something like that is said publicly, there's no going back. Claire continued, steady and precise. For the last 3 months of his relationship, he was seeing another woman. while telling Evelyn he was working on himself, while accepting financial help, while presenting himself as something he wasn't. She held up her phone. I have the full message history. Dates, times, everything. She didn't read all of it. She didn't need to. She showed enough. Enough for people to see the pattern. Enough for them to understand. Enough for the story to break. The comments exploded before the video even finished. Wait, what? Is this real? He said she was the problem. And then the shift. Oh, wow. So he cheated? He lied to everyone? I watched the numbers climb. Views, shares, comments. Thousands. Then hundreds of thousands. By noon, it had crossed 1 million. I set my phone down slowly. There it was. Not my voice. Not my defense. Just truth, delivered by someone he couldn't discredit without destroying himself further. And it worked. Because Mason tried. Of course he did. He posted a response an hour later. Another video. Less calm this time, more strained. My sister doesn't understand the full context, he said, forcing steadiness into his voice. There are dynamics she's not aware of. Emotional patterns that... The comments cut him off. Stop! Just stop. We saw the messages. You're done. He deleted it within 20 minutes. But the damage was already done. And it didn't stop there. Because once people start looking, they don't stop at one truth. They start pulling everything apart. Andrea called him into work that afternoon. I didn't hear it directly from him. I heard it from someone else in the office who still had enough curiosity to message me. It didn't go well. Apparently, Mason tried to frame it as harassment, as a personal situation being blown out of proportion, as something he needed space to deal with. Andrea didn't argue. She just pulled up his public profile, scrolled, silence. Then she asked one question. Is this reflective of the professional standards you represent here? No raised voice, no emotion, just fact. He didn't have an answer. He got a formal warning. Anything else tied to the company, and he was out. His access to social media on work devices was cut immediately. The same man who had built an entire identity online was now being blocked from it at his desk. I almost felt something for him then. Almost. But then I remembered the videos, the edits, the way he had tried to turn me into something I wasn't just to keep his image intact. And the feeling passed. The church situation followed. That one hit deeper. Not because I cared what they thought, but because Mason did. His entire rebirth had been rooted in that space, in the approval, the structure, the audience. And now they were looking. Really looking. Claire told Naomi, who told me. There had been a meeting. Questions. Concerns about integrity, about representation, about whether someone presenting himself as a spiritual guide should be this dishonest. Mason was removed from any teaching roles, asked to step back, encouraged to reflect. A polite way of saying he was no longer who he claimed to be. And then came the part that would have been unbelievable if I hadn't seen everything else already. He created a fundraiser. I stared at the screen when Naomi sent it. I thought it was a joke at first. It wasn't. Help a man rebuild after emotional abuse. $30,000. The description was carefully written and emotionally loaded. My ex-partner has systematically dismantled my life after I chose to leave a toxic dynamic. I am now facing financial instability, professional backlash, and emotional distress for choosing growth and truth. I read it twice. Then I laughed. Not loudly, not bitterly, just in disbelief. He had turned everything into a narrative again. Only this time no one was buying it. The comments filled in before the donations could. Claire again. Stop. Just stop. Then someone else. Didn't you cheat? Another. This is insane. And then the one that ended it. Serena's husband. Or soon-to-be ex-husband. Interesting. My divorce filing says my wife spent thousands on retreats with you. Maybe ask her for the money. Silence. Then the fundraiser disappeared. Gone. 6 hours. That was all it lasted. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the empty space where it had been. Mason had tried everything. Control. Narrative. Sympathy. And now nothing was holding. Everything he built depended on people not comparing stories, not asking questions, not seeing both sides. Now they had. My phone buzzed again. A message from Naomi. He's spiraling. I didn't respond. Because I already knew. You could feel it in the way everything was happening too fast now, too loud, too exposed. There was no space left for him to hide. And people like Mason don't know what to do when there's nowhere left to perform. I thought he would disappear after that. Most people would. When everything collapses that publicly, that completely, they retreat. They go quiet. They wait for the noise to die down and hope time buries the worst of it. Mason did the opposite. He escalated. 3 days after the fundraiser vanished, he announced a public healing ceremony in the park. The same park where we had our first date. I stared at the post longer than I should have. Not because I was confused, because I was trying to understand how someone could fall that far and still believe he was rising. Join me as I release toxic energy and reclaim my truth, the caption read. This is about transformation, about burning what no longer serves us. That word stayed with me. Burning. Naomi called within minutes. Please tell me he's not serious. He is, I said. She exhaled sharply. You're not going, right? No, I didn't need to, because something told me this wasn't going to stay contained. And it didn't. Someone streamed it. Of course they did. By the time I opened the video, there were already hundreds of people watching. Mason stood in the center of a small circle of maybe a dozen followers, incense smoke drifting, candles arranged unevenly on the ground. His voice raised just enough to sound powerful, not enough to sound unstable. He was performing again. Only this time it wasn't working. I released the energy of betrayal, he said, holding up a printed photo. My face stared back at me from his hand. I felt something twist in my chest. Not pain, not anger, something quieter, something final. He dropped the photo into a small metal bowl and lit it. Flames caught quickly. The comments exploded. Is this real? What is he doing? This is not okay. He kept going. One by one, we let go of what tried to control us. Another photo, this time from a family gathering. He lit that one too. Then another. And that was when the stream shifted. Because someone in the comments pointed something out. Wait, that's not just her. The camera zoomed slightly, and I saw it. The third photo. It wasn't just me. It was me and my cousin. Mason didn't even notice. He was too deep in it, too focused on the performance. Until someone else stepped into frame. Uniform. Calm. Controlled. My cousin. Sir, he said, voice flat. Do you have a permit for this? Mason froze, just for a second. Then he straightened, like he could talk his way out of it. This is a spiritual ceremony, he said. You can't interfere with... You're lighting open flames in a public park, my cousin interrupted. That requires a permit. The chat exploded. Oh my God. This is getting worse. Mason's voice sharpened. This is harassment. You're targeting me because... I'm here because someone reported an open fire, my cousin said evenly. Then, after a beat, and because you're currently burning a photo of me. Silence. Even through the screen, I felt it. That moment. The exact second everything tipped. Mason looked down at the bowl, then back up. And for the first time since I'd known him, he had nothing. No script. No angle. No performance left. He stepped back. His foot caught on something. The candles. The uneven ground. I don't know. But suddenly he was off balance. Then gone. Straight back into the shallow fountain behind him. Water splashed up. The stream shook as people moved. Voices overlapping. Laughter. Shock. The comments flew so fast I couldn't read them. I stared at the screen, unmoving. Because there it was. Not dramatic. Not orchestrated. Not controlled. Just consequence. My cousin didn't arrest him. Didn't escalate. Just handed him a citation and told him to clean up. And the stream kept going. Long enough for someone to clip it. Long enough for it to spread. By the next morning, it was everywhere. Memes, reposts, captions. From spiritual awakening to public meltdown in less than 12 hours. I didn't engage, didn't comment, didn't react. I just watched it pass through the world the same way everything else had. Fast, loud, unstoppable. A week later, I got a message from his mother. We're getting him help. 30 days. Professional treatment. Emotional regulation. I read it once, then set my phone down. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Time moved, quietly this time. No more posts, no more videos, no more performances. Just silence where chaos used to be. 2 weeks later, I saw him. At a grocery store. He looked smaller. Not physically. Something else. Like the version of himself he had built had been stripped away, and what was left didn't know how to stand the same way. He saw me, paused, started to move toward me, then stopped. His mother's hand on his arm. Firm. Not part of your agreement, she said, low but clear. He looked at me one last time, then let himself be pulled away. And that was it. No confrontation, no closure, no final words. Just distance. That night, when I got home, there was a small note tucked under my windshield wiper. 2 words. I'm sorry. No explanation, no justification, just that. I threw it away. Inside, the apartment was warm. Music played softly from the speaker near the sink. And someone else was standing in my kitchen, moving slightly off beat while stirring a pan on the stove. Adrian. He turned when he heard the door open. Hey, he said with a smile. You took forever. I know, I said, setting my keys down. Did you get everything? Yeah. He nodded, then laughed when he nearly splashed sauce onto the counter, trying to stir and dance at the same time. It was messy, normal, real. No performance, no grand statement. Just life. I leaned against the counter and watched him for a moment. Then he looked over. What? He asked, smiling. Nothing, I said. And I meant it. Because for the first time in a long time, there was nothing left to fix. Nothing left to prove. Nothing left to survive. Just something simple. Something steady. Something true. And that was more than enough.